It's been called a pandemic within a pandemic and the shadow pandemic. As a survivor of domestic violence, I care deeply about the prevention of violence at home. Unfortunately, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men experience intimate partner violence, or IPV. Violence can take various forms. It can be physical, emotional, sexual, or psychological. People of all races, cultures, genders, sexual orientations, socioeconomic classes, and religions experience IPV. The pandemic created more challenging conditions for existing factors related to violence prevention. Significant job losses, strained economic independence, and financial entanglements. Restrictions on shelters and gatherings, limited alternative housing options. School closures, work from home, and childcare added new stresses to families. Thankfully, many of the pandemic-related conditions are easing. Jobs are in recovery, restrictions are being released, and kids are going back to school. These changes may bring their own challenges to preventing violence, but the pandemic mostly created pressure on conditions that were already present. Whether due to mistrust from a history of police brutality or dismay from attempting to navigate the legal system for protection, or fear, or any of the many valid reasons, a majority of those who experience violence at home are reluctant to report their experiences to law enforcement. Cops are more likely than others to abuse their partners. Lee Goodmark of the University of Maryland School of Law says, IPV by police officers is a systemic, structural issue created and fueled by the ways in which police officers are socialized and trained. As a result of their training and their state authority, police abuse of partners is more problematic and more potentially dangerous than abuse by civilians. She further goes on to say, the U.S. response to IPV relies heavily on the criminal justice system to enforce domestic violence laws, and the reality is that criminalization cannot be an effective policy when police officers are disproportionately committing IPV. It sounds like the high number of survivors unwilling to engage with the legal system have good reasons. I remember experiencing this myself. I just knew in my gut that calling the cops would only add to the violence and make the situation worse. So what can be done? Early feminist activists in the movement to end violence against women centered the autonomy of survivors in domestic violence policy. However, their vision of survivors determining when the state would intervene, if or when they experienced violence, was never achieved. According to Kimberly Bailey, professor at Chicago Kent College of Law, this early vision of victim autonomy is simply not translatable within the context of the current American criminal justice regime. Crime is viewed as a violation against the state, not the victim. Thus, the concept of complete victim autonomy does not have much meaning within the legal system, and victim autonomy is not the primary priority of the current criminal justice response to domestic violence. Clearly, improvements need to be made in the criminal justice system on how it interacts with everyone and seemingly at every point of contact. Survivors of IPV provide yet another example of an area of necessary criminal justice reform. As it often happens in political activism, significant issues are interconnected in undeniable ways. Scholars have argued that the criminal justice response to IPV is ineffective, that it focuses disproportionately on people of color and people with low income, that it ignores the larger structural issues that drive IPV, and that it robs women of autonomy and ignores women's needs. Throughout the coming years, libertarian feminists must focus on criminal justice reform, police accountability, and ensuring equal treatment under the law for all individuals. In addition to centering the autonomy of survivors in domestic violence policy, The next decade of libertarian feminist advocacy may include ending qualified immunity and cash bail and decriminalizing sex work and drugs. At the heart of libertarian feminism is the rejection of coercion, or stated differently, the promotion of consent. Libertarianism is consent culture. Intimate partner violence is such a violation and is already so traumatic for survivors. The respect for individual autonomy should be at the forefront of any efforts to advocate for survivors of domestic violence. Thanks to Feminists for Liberty for inspiring this video essay and the research I did for it. Source links are available in the notes.